Black Waitress is fired for helping Elon Musk. Next day she gets the shock of her life. The sun shone gently through the trees, its rays streaming onto the cobblestone streets of a city savoring a slower pace than usual. A light breeze swept through, carrying the faint fragrance of flowers from nearby gardens. Elon Musk, one of the most renowned names in the world, had stepped away from the opulence of his offices and high-stakes meetings. Today, he sought something different, freedom unshackled from fame and the glare of the spotlight. He was so simply dressed that few would have recognized him, a neatly pressed checkered shirt, a perfectly fitting pair of jeans, and a baseball cap shielding half his face. No security detail trailed him, no luxury cars followed in line, it was just him, alone. As he strolled down the cobblestone streets, Elon stopped in front of a small cafe called Cozy Brew, a warm, inviting corner tucked beneath a canopy of trees. He hadn't chosen the cafe for any particular reason, just the comforting familiarity it seemed to offer. As he pushed open the wooden door, a small bell jingled softly overhead. Inside, the cafe revealed itself with polished wooden tables, warm golden light, and the smooth hum of jazz music filling the air. A few patrons glanced up from their conversations as the door opened, their eyes flitting briefly over the unfamiliar man before returning to their coffee and chatter. No one realized they had just witnessed the arrival of one of the wealthiest men on earth. Elon picked a table near the window where the sunlight streamed in through the curtains, casting soft golden patterns on the wooden surface. A server approached him, her smile friendly and welcoming. "Good morning, what can I get for you today?" she asked. Elon smiled warmly, his deep voice steady. "A black coffee, please, and an apple pie if you have any." "Of course, I'll bring that right out." Elon gave a slight nod, his gaze drifting toward the window. The street outside radiated a rare kind of peace, a feeling he hadn't often been able to experience. He pondered to himself, sometimes I wonder, if I weren't Elon Musk, how different would life be? Could I wander freely without being chased by cameras? Could I talk to strangers without worrying they'd record or photograph me? Perhaps this simplicity is the greatest luxury of all. Still, he bore no resentment. Elon had always believed that every person has a mission, and his was to propel the world forward. But even those with grand missions need moments to breathe and savor the simpler things in life. Elon smiled faintly, taking another bite of his pie. He had no idea that this peaceful Sunday morning was about to take a sharp turn. The world has its way of testing you, even when all you're doing is sipping a cup of coffee, he thought, as his eyes flickered toward the wooden door. It creaked open again, accompanied by the distant roar of motorcycle engines growing louder and louder. Elon was still savoring his coffee, his gaze fixed on the flow of passers-by outside the window. The peaceful atmosphere inside Cozy Brew seemed to envelop him, dissolving the usual tension of his hectic life. Suddenly, the roar of motorcycle engines pierced through the stillness, growing louder with each passing second. The cafe's wooden door swung open forcefully, the jingle of the small bell overhead sounding almost like a warning. 5 men strode into the cafe, clad in black leather jackets and ripped jeans, their arms and necks bearing intimidating tattoos. The air filled with the sharp scent of gasoline and cigarette smoke, causing a few patrons to wrinkle their noses in discomfort. The men seemed oblivious to everyone around them. Their loud chatter and boisterous laughter drowned out the soft jazz playing in the background. Other patrons, including the staff, cast fleeting glances at the group before quickly looking away, not wanting to attract their attention. At the far end of the cafe, Elon sat quietly, unaffected. He took another sip of his coffee, his expression calm and composed. There was no trace of fear or unease. Instead, he let his eyes sweep over the group briefly before returning to his apple pie. One of the bikers, clearly the leader, had a tall frame and a skull tattoo etched prominently on his forearm. His name was Roy, and as he scanned the cafe, his gaze landed on Elon sitting quietly in the corner. A sly grin spread across his face. "Well, look at this," Roy sneered. "A lonely gentleman sipping black coffee. Looks like you've wandered into the wrong place, pal." When he received no response, Roy shrugged and sauntered toward Elon's table. "Hey, buddy," Roy said, leaning closer. "Deep in thought, are we? Or maybe trying to pose as some sensitive, brooding writer?" Elon lifted his head, his gaze steady and unflinching. His voice was low and even, carrying an unmistakable undertone of authority.
Just enjoying a quiet Sunday. Maybe you should do the same instead of making a scene.
The subtle but pointed reply made Roy pause for a moment, his grin faltering.
Then he broke into loud laughter, signaling his crew to join in. Enjoying yourself, huh? All right, then. Let's help you enjoy it a little more.
Roy reached for Elon's slice of apple pie, picking it up and twirling it in his hand as though it were a toy.
Is this the kind of dessert rich folks eat? Smells pretty good, I'll admit. Elon remained silent, his calm demeanor unshaken.
He gently placed his coffee cup back on the table and fixed his gaze on Roy.
If you've picked it up, then eat it, Elon said firmly. But remember, it's not free.
The unexpected remark made Roy pause briefly before letting out another loud laugh. Yet, there was something forced in his laughter, as though Elon's words had struck a nerve. A smaller but fiercer-looking member of the group chimed in, his tone sharp.
Looks like this guy's pretty confident. But do you think confidence is going to save you?
The cafe's atmosphere grew heavier. A few customers quietly got up and made their way out, eager to avoid any trouble.
Understood. Continuing with the text.
The young woman muttered to her friend, "Let's go.
We don't want to get involved."
An older man near the counter sighed and shook his head.
This isn't going to end well.
Behind the counter, Anna, the young server, stood frozen as she watched the scene unfold. Her heart raced as the situation escalated, but no one in the cafe dared to intervene. Leaning closer, Roy tapped his fingers on the table, his smirk widening.
Tell me, who are you really? You don't seem like you belong here. Or maybe you're just someone trying to hide from something.
Elon met his gaze directly, his eyes piercing as though looking straight into Roy's soul. He calmly sipped his coffee before responding, his voice low but filled with an unshakable authority.
Who I am, does it matter? But if you don't know how to respect others, then this isn't the place for you. Elon's reply was like gasoline poured onto a fire.
Roy shot up from his seat, slamming his hand onto the table with a loud thud that echoed through the cafe, making the remaining patrons even more uneasy. But just as the situation threatened to spiral out of control, a voice rang out from behind.
Anna's voice, trembling but resolute. Stop it. No one is allowed to harass our customers here.
The room froze. All eyes turned to Anna, the petite but determined young woman now standing face to face with the imposing biker group. Her body trembled slightly, but her resolve was unmistakable. She knew she couldn't stand by and do nothing. Everything seemed to freeze for a moment as Anna stepped forward, her eyes steady even as her hands trembled slightly. Her heart pounded in her chest, but something deep inside told her she couldn't just stand by.
This is a cafe, not a place for causing trouble. If you'd like to order something, I'll be happy to serve you. But if you keep disturbing other customers, I'll have to ask you to leave.
Roy lifted his head, his expression a mix of surprise and amusement as he looked at the young woman standing in front of him.
Well, look who we have here, a little server playing sheriff, huh?
Turning to the rest of the group, he let out a loud laugh that echoed through the cafe.
Did you all hear that? She's asking us to leave.
Another biker, shorter but with a menacing air, clapped his hands slowly in sarcastic applause.
Brave, huh? But I don't think you want to get involved in this, little girl. Anna took a deep breath.
Her voice wavered slightly but her gaze never left Roy's. I don't care what you think of me, but everyone here deserves respect. You have no right to disturb them, and you certainly have no right to harass that customer. Roy crossed his arms, his eyebrows arching in mock surprise.
That customer? You mean this guy over here?
He gestured toward Elon, then burst into laughter as though Anna's words were some kind of joke.
Look at him, a guy sitting there quietly, not saying a word, and you think he needs protecting?
Come on, little girl, don't play the hero.
It's not worth it. Anna turned to look at Elon.
The man still sat calmly, his expression unshaken, but there was a glimmer, a spark of respect in his eyes as he met hers.
That look gave Anna the courage to continue. Maybe he doesn't need my protection, Anna said with firm resolve.
But I believe no one deserves to be treated like this, no matter who they are.
The cafe seemed to hold its breath. A few customers nodded quietly, admiration in their eyes as they looked at the young woman standing her ground. But not everyone agreed.
Near the counter, an older man muttered to his companion, "Brave, sure.
But she's inviting trouble. This isn't worth it."
Roy stepped closer, his gaze sharp and piercing like a blade.
"And what if I don't leave? What are you going to do? Call the cops?"
He looked her up and down, his smirk curling mockingly.
"Or do you think I'll just listen to you because you're acting all tough?"
The soft sound of a coffee cup being placed on the table broke the tense silence.
Elon had set his mug down deliberately, the faint clink echoing through the heavy atmosphere.
He raised his head, his voice calm and deliberate yet carrying a weight that silenced the room. "I think she's doing the right thing," Elon said.
"And if you're smart, you'll listen to her." Roy whipped around, his face twisting in anger at being interrupted. "And who the hell do you think you are to tell me what to do?" Elon rose to his feet.
He wasn't as physically imposing as Roy, but his confidence and presence commanded the room. The weight of his words hung in the air as he spoke. "I'm someone who believes that kindness and respect matter more than strength, no matter where you are. You may not care about that, but I know she's right and you're wrong." Roy stared at Elon, his fists clenching tightly. He looked ready to explode but couldn't find the words to argue back.
Another biker, one with a shorter fuse, finally snapped. "All right, enough of this.
I don't care who's right or wrong, but I can't stand this fake high and mighty crap anymore." He lunged forward, raising his hand to shove Elon.
"Stop it."
Anna's voice rang out, clear and sharp.
At that very moment, the sound of police sirens pierced the air outside the cafe.
A staff member had discreetly called the authorities as soon as tensions began to rise.
2 officers stepped inside, their eyes quickly scanning the scene.
They gestured firmly for the bikers to stand down. A few customers sighed in relief, while others watched the scene unfold with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Roy let out a derisive snort but held his tongue. One of the more hot-headed bikers resisted, earning himself a pair of handcuffs before being escorted out. The others received stern warnings before begrudgingly leaving.
As the bikers left, the cafe's atmosphere remained heavy.
Anna stood frozen, gripping her serving tray tightly. She could feel every pair of eyes in the cafe focused on her.
Elon walked over to her, his voice warm and sincere. "Thank you. You've taught me something not everyone understands. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it." Anna offered a faint smile, though her hands still trembled slightly.
Her gaze, however, remained steady. "I just think this world needs more people like you," Anna said softly, "and fewer people like them." As the police left, escorting the aggressive bikers out, an eerie silence fell over the cafe. The remaining customers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of unease and bewilderment. The once peaceful cafe now bore the heavy air of a storm that had just passed. Anna still stood frozen in place, her serving tray trembling slightly in her hands. Her heart raced, not from fear but from a hollow sense of isolation.
She knew she had done the right thing, but the nagging doubt remained: would anyone else understand?
Near the door, a woman leaned into her friend and whispered, her voice tinged with annoyance.
"What a hassle.
This place used to be so quiet.
Now it's anything but relaxing."
"Exactly," her friend replied.
"Nobody wants to deal with this kind of drama on a Sunday morning."
At a nearby table, an elderly man's trembling hand clutched his coffee cup as he spoke louder, his voice tinged with disapproval.
"She didn't have to get involved.
All she did was make things worse. If she'd just let them do their thing, it would have been over quickly."
The murmurs felt like sharp knives cutting into Anna's chest.
She held her head high, trying to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed the sting of their words. She hadn't expected praise, but she had at least hoped for understanding. From behind the counter, Mr. Smith, the middle-aged owner of the cafe, stepped forward. His salt and pepper hair and hurried demeanor always gave him the air of a man juggling too many things at once.
He noticed the dissatisfied glances from some customers and frowned deeply.
Anna, I need a word with you, Mr. Smith said, his tone curt. Without waiting for her response, he turned and headed toward the back of the cafe, signaling for her to follow. Anna hesitated for a moment before reluctantly walking after him. In the back area, out of earshot of the customers, Mr. Smith's frustrated tone carried clearly through the small space. "What were you thinking?" he demanded. "This is a cafe, not a police station or some stage for heroics. Customers don't come here for chaos." Anna's voice was small but steady. "I just wanted to protect him. He didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Mr. Smith said, sighing heavily. "But you have to understand, our customers come here for peace and quiet. And now look at this. Half of them walked out, and this place isn't relaxing anymore. That's what we sell here, comfort, not trouble." Anna bit her lip hard, struggling to keep her emotions in check. His words, though cold, weren't entirely untrue. But that didn't make them any easier to hear. Her voice trembled. "So you're saying I shouldn't have done anything? That I should have just let them do whatever they wanted, even if they were harassing someone?" Mr. Smith ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I'm not saying that, but you can't handle things like this, Anna. It's not professional, and actions like that could cost us even more customers." Anna didn't respond right away. She stood there, feeling the weight of an unspoken divide, a chasm between the principles she believed in and the practicalities her boss seemed to prioritize. Her silence spoke volumes, a quiet clash between two opposing worldviews, what's right and what's convenient. Finally, Mr. Smith shook his head, his voice firm with finality. "I can't let this happen again. If anything like this ever happens in the future, I need you to focus on doing your job, serving the customers. No more interference. Is that clear?" Anna lowered her head, her voice barely audible as she replied, "Yes. I understand." As Mr. Smith walked away, Anna stood motionless, a wave of emotions crashing over her. She didn't regret doing the right thing, but Mr. Smith's reprimand and the cold stares of some customers made her feel lonelier than ever. Returning to the counter, Anna resumed her work. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact, but her eyes couldn't help but dart toward Elon's table every now and then. Once the cafe began to settle, Elon stood up from his table. He walked slowly toward Anna, his steps measured, his presence both calm and purposeful. "Are you all right?" Elon asked, his voice warm and steady. Startled, Anna looked up, surprised to see the concern in his eyes. She nodded, forcing a faint smile. "I'm fine. Thank you." Elon held her gaze, his eyes reflecting a deep sense of respect. "What you did today, not everyone has the courage to do that. Thank you. Not just for standing up for me, but for doing the right thing even when no one else dared to." Anna lowered her head slightly, her voice soft but firm. "I just couldn't stand by. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness. You know that better than anyone." Elon smiled faintly, though a hint of thoughtfulness lingered in his expression. "You're right. And you reminded me that in a chaotic world, sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to change everything." As Elon returned to his table, the cafe remained tense. Some customers had already begun to leave, their expressions ranging from irritation to indifference. Near the door, a woman shot Anna a withering glare before stepping outside. Behind the counter, Mr. Smith sighed heavily, shaking his head as he stared at the empty chairs left behind. Anna stared at her hands, her emotions swirling in a storm of conflict, a touch of regret, a glimmer of pride, and a deep sadness that weighed heavily in her chest. Elon left the cafe shortly after, saying nothing more. As he walked out the door, he turned back one last time, his eyes resting on Anna. It was a look of quiet admiration, a silent acknowledgement of the courage it took to stand tall in the face of adversity. Monday morning brought warm sunlight streaming through the curtains of Cozy Brew, painting the cafe with a familiar glow. Customers came and went as they did every day, but the atmosphere felt heavier, laden with the memory of what had transpired the day before. Anna stepped into the cafe, her eyes tired from a sleepless night. She told herself to focus on her tasks, to stay busy, and not dwell on what had happened. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the quiet sadness that lingered in her chest.
The soft chime of the cafe door suddenly rang out.
A sleek luxury car had just pulled up in front of the cafe, drawing the attention of everyone inside.
All heads turned toward the entrance. This time, Elon Musk didn't walk in wearing jeans or a baseball cap.
Instead, he entered the cafe dressed in a tailored suit, exuding confidence and authority. Yet, despite his commanding presence, he still carried an air of approachability. 2 bodyguards flanked him, standing at either side of the door as if to underline that this was no ordinary customer.
The atmosphere in the cafe shifted instantly.
Conversation near the door ceased, and all eyes were drawn to the powerful figure who had just stepped inside.
Elon walked straight toward the counter where Anna was standing behind the espresso machine.
Her heart began to race, a flood of thoughts running through her mind.
Asterisk, why is he here? Is he upset about what happened yesterday? Asterisk.
When Elon stopped in front of her, his gaze was serious but not unkind.
Anna, he began, his voice steady, yesterday, you did something not many people would have the courage to do. You weren't just brave, you demonstrated something this world desperately needs, integrity.
Anna froze, unable to speak. She didn't know how to respond, but the emotion in her eyes spoke volumes. Elon's voice carried a quiet strength that commanded the attention of the entire cafe. Even those who had initially tried to avoid staring now leaned in, listening intently.
I'm not here just to thank you, Elon continued. I'm here to extend an invitation. Tesla is always searching for people who are willing to stand up for what's right.
I'd like to invite you to join our social welfare foundation. There, you can continue to uphold the values you believe in, not just in a small cafe, but on a much larger scale.
The cafe fell silent.
Anna stared at Elon, her thoughts swirling. She had never dreamed that her actions, taken in a moment of courage, could lead to something so extraordinary.
I don't know what to say, Anna stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity. I'll do my very best. Elon smiled softly, his expression warm and kind. Sometimes all the world needs is for someone to stand up at the right moment. Yesterday, you did exactly that.
Behind the counter, Mr. Smith, the cafe's owner, stood frozen. His face was pale. He couldn't believe that the man Anna had defended yesterday was someone as influential as Elon Musk. The other customers, one by one, began to look at Anna differently. If they had doubted or criticized her actions yesterday, now their gazes were filled with admiration and even a tinge of regret. Near the door, a woman leaned toward her friend and whispered, "She's truly brave. I feel terrible for judging her yesterday."
Me too, her friend replied. I wish I had the courage to do what she did. Before leaving, Elon turned and looked around the cafe. His gaze was steady, his voice calm yet full of weight. Freedom is not just the right to do as you please, he said, but the responsibility to stand up for what is right. If we fail to act against injustice, can we truly call ourselves free?
His words echoed through the room, leaving everyone silent, as if each word had etched itself into their minds.
Elon left the cafe, but his presence left a lasting imprint.
Anna watched him go, her heart swelling with hope.
Yesterday, she had thought of herself as just a small cafe worker.
Today, she realized that even the smallest actions could lead to profound change. Mr. Smith approached Anna, his voice lower, his eyes reflecting remorse.
Anna, I owe you an apology, he said. Yesterday, I failed to see what you did. I'm proud to have an employee like you.
For the first time in days, Anna smiled, a genuine smile that lifted the weight from her heart.
Anna stepped out of the cafe, ready to embark on a new chapter of her life.
She left behind her old workplace but carried with her a powerful lesson: standing up for what's right, even just once, can change everything.
The world doesn't need perfect people, it needs brave ones.
And sometimes, it all begins with a single cup of coffee.